On this episode of Rust Rescue, the team begins the teardown of the 1945 fire truck project. Then Vince fits the floor pans into the 1977 Trans Am, while LeeAnn preps the subframe with a new rust-resistant coating.
I'm Vince, but everybody calls me Taz. I've been building custom hot rods since I was a kid. I couldn't afford to buy one, so I learned how to build them. This is my partner LeeAnn. When she's not out shopping for cars, she's racing them. Our team rescues rusty old wrecks, and we'll teach you how to restore them for just $10,000. Why are you only going to give me $10,000?
You're going to be lucky if your wife lets you spend that much.
That's true. So if you're not afraid to pick up a wrench and get your hands dirty, we'll show you the right parts, tools, and techniques to get the job done. This is Rust Rescue.
We've got our fire truck moved into our new shop, so we actually have room to work on it now. So we're going to begin tearing everything down. Everything has got to come off of this vehicle. We've got to pull off the lights, pull out the gauges, pull off the fenders, take all the exterior parts off, because we need to see how much good metal we have and what we don't. But before you start your tear down, you need to get organized, because if you start tearing apart your car, you're going to lose things. So we recommend getting a big Rubbermaid container so that you can put all the bigger parts in here. And then you're going to need a good set of Ziploc bags. I like the quarter size and the gallon size to put some of your smaller parts. And make sure you label everything with a Sharpie so you know which bolts go where, which screws came out of what. That way you'll know where things are and how to put it all back together. You may even need some of these nice little shipping tags, because some of your parts are going to be greasy and hard to label, and you can just put the name of the part on the tag, tie it around it, and you'll be good to go. We've got a lot of work to do to tear down this fire truck, so I'm going to go grab Vince and Orvis, and we're going to get to work. We also need to take all of the tags off of this truck. We want to do it very carefully, because if you break or damage them, they are very difficult, if not impossible, to replace. But the one tag you do not want to remove is the VIN tag. The VIN tag is kind of like the birth certificate for the vehicle, and if you don't have that attached to the vehicle with the original rivets, the DMV gets very upset, and it makes it more difficult and more expensive to get the vehicle tagged and titled.
What we found on the fire truck is, back in the day, as opposed to using Bondo, all the seams were done with lead. We didn't think there was any of that on this truck, but we were sadly mistaken, because the entire top piece is lead, or lead coated. So now we have to figure out a way to get all this lead off little by little and start breaking off all the seams so we can get inside of here to rewire this truck. So it's going to be a little tricky, and it's going to take a lot of time, but we'll do it. Let me up. And yes, they're letting me play with fire.
Vince is getting ready to fit in the floor pans on our Trans Am project, so I wanted to take a minute to talk about how you should shop for floor pans. You can buy these online. We happen to get this one at National Parts Depot for about 140 bucks. They sell different sizes and different qualities. We got the full pan for each side. You can get just the toe pan, you can get just the rear part of the pan, or you can get a full set, which is both sides plus the tunnel piece in the middle that goes over the hump. we don't like getting those because they're harder to fit. We prefer getting the full one side pan, and you'll notice different price points. Don't get the cheapest one because you do get what you pay for. The cheap ones are very flimsy, they're going to be harder to weld, and they're not going to hold up. But you also don't have to get the most expensive one either. We went with a middle of the road, good quality pan. Like I said, we only paid 140 bucks. So I'm going to take this over to Vince so he can fit it in the Trans Am.
All right, now that we've got the floor pans all cut out, we have to fit the new ones in place. There's a lot of steps to doing it. It's not as simple as just cutting a floor pan out, dropping the new one in, and you're done. What we're going to do first is we're going to get the floor pan to fit in place around all the beams. We have to cut out the section for the beams. We've got to cut out the section for the center console. We've got to make sure it's flush up against the front, flush up against the back, and flush up against the sides. Once you do that, and we're going to go through this just briefly and then reiterate later on, but right now we're going to just show you the different steps. Once you get the floor pan fitted in, you take it back out again, and you've got to prep the floor pan to go in, which means you've got to have holes in the floor pan to be able to weld through. That's a whole nother step. We'll show you that in a second. Then the third thing is you're going to do is you're going to basically prep the metal underneath to be able to be welded in. A lot of people will just take a floor pan and weld it in place over bare metal to bare metal. You're never going to get an airtight seal, so you're never going to get a watertight seal. It's the same basic thing. So what you want to do is you want to primer the metal so that when it's laying up against it, it's not going to rot within a matter of a couple of years. Now you can't use regular primer when you're doing a weld. You have to use what they call weldable primer. It's a copper-based primer. What this does is it gives it a coating against the bare metal so that you're not running a risk of rotting the new metal you're putting in down the road. The best way to do this is you have to have it clean first, so we're not going to spray it on just yet, but we just wanted to show you what it was. So, step number one, we're going to fit the pan in. We've already done a little bit of fitting on it just to get it past certain points so we can show you how to do it, but I'll show you myself. Bear with me. Okay, now, when you're putting the pans in, they're not going to sit flush because they're set up to not go over the beams. You usually cut the beams out when you do it. We don't have to do that because they're in good shape. So we just made little cuts, if you notice, within the beams itself to go around the spots. Let's get that one in place. As you see, we got it pretty flush, but you can see the depth of my finger in the hole between the beam and the floor pan. That can't be. It has to be flush against that floor pan. So, what we're going to do is get it set as close as possible. Then we're going to take a screwdriver and make sure all these pieces have gone past the gaps. Then you're going to go to your local hardware store and you're going to buy self-tapping screws. You're going to take these and you're going to strategically put them around the floor pan in certain places to bring the floor pan down to where the beam is. We can start right here, because what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take it from the center out. If you try to do it from the ends and then go to the center, you're going to have a bow effect. So you're going to get the center in place first. And then as you do it, make sure the way to get this thing as flush as possible. Now, if you notice, that's the beam. Then you're going to go around the entire floor pan and do exactly the same thing we just did. once you get them all in place, then what you're going to do is mark it with a marker along the edge. This is going to be where you're going to actually do your wells. What you want to know is you want to know where you have to get all the rust off. Again, not as crazy as you did in the front when you're doing the painting, because you're not going to paint this aside from the spray primer, but you have to know where it has to be bare metal so you're able to do your welds on that. All right, now that you got it in, you got to take it all back out again, because now you have to prep the pan to go in. So let's do that. Okay, first thing we have to do is we have to clean all of these shards off of the frame that's on here. If you don't take these off, the frame and the floor pan are not going to mesh together very well. You got to get most of it off as good as possible, but you don't have to go too crazy. Nice and clean. Okay, the next thing you're going to want to do, like we talked about before, your weldable primer. You want to get a good coating of the primer on there. This way you've sealed the metal, it's not going to rust on you as it sits through the years of, you know, the way it is. If you notice, whoop, it is very thick primer. If you notice the copper color, that's because it actually has copper in it. That's what makes it weldable. All right, let's get the floor pan all prepped and drop that in next.
We have our Trans Am project pulled apart into two pieces. We've pulled out the front subframe or front clip so that I can start working on sealing that piece while Vince is still working on the floor pans. We found this incredible product when we were at SEMA in the fall called Zero Rust. This is a commercial grade sealant that is designed to protect either new or old steel from rust. So it's perfect for our project cars because what we have is a whole lot of old steel with a lot of rust on it. The Zero Rust product comes in gallons, quarts, and even a spray can. So what you can do is you can either apply this to the frame of the car with a sprayer if you've got a professional sprayer, or if you don't have a room that you can set up as a paint booth, you can actually just apply it with a brush. That's what makes this product so incredibly easy to use. But before you start applying it, you need to do some prep on the car. So here's what we're going to need. You're going to need some sort of degreaser and dewaxer. We just picked up some acetone. You want to get all the residue off of the frame of the car. And then you're going to need to take your wire brush. We've got one on our angle grinder, and we have a hand one. These are going to be used to prep the metal surface, get as much of the rust off of it as you can. While you're doing that, be sure to wear good protection. I'm going to cover my sleeves with my welding jacket, and you need to protect yourself from all the dust and the rust that comes out. So we've got good professional grade inhalers. This one is designed to filter out all the dust. And then when you get to painting, you'll need to have a paint inhaler, a breather, so that this is going to filter out all the paint particles. And of course, you're always going to want to wear your eye protection and protect your hands. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the Zero Rust. I'm going to prep the car, I'm going to wire brush it, and then I'm going to start using the Zero Rust product. And I'm just going to use the brush method because we don't have room in our paint booth right now on this car. It's a small area and it's going to be really easy to do with a brush. So I'm going to get started. Normally the first step in prepping your subframe is to take a degreaser and get all the residue off of it. But ours is in such bad shape that we don't even have any residue. All we have is a whole lot of rust. So I'm gonna go ahead and just get my wire brush and get that done, get all this rust off of here, and hope that we've got some good metal under here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. All right, let's see how this feels. Woo, feels like metal. All right, ready to go on to the next step. Now that I have gotten all the rust off of here with the wire brush, I'm going to wipe it down. I'm going to use some acetone, but first I'm just going to do one layer with just my rag and see. Look at all that stuff. If you have a air compressor with a blower on it, you can blow a lot of this dust off. Fortunately, our grinder blows a lot of stuff off for me, so no big deal. Then you want to take the acetone or whatever type of degreaser you're using. Always wear protective gloves when you're using this stuff. It'll take off the first layer of skin. And we're just going to wipe this down just to get any additional residue, any grease, wax off of here so that we have pure, clean metal for the Zero Rust product to adhere to. All right, time to apply Zero Rust. Normally you would want to do all of the prepping on the entire subframe before you start your sealing process, but we're not that patient, and we wanted to go ahead and show you how to use the product and show you the difference. Now, in your wire brushing, you can see we have some of the original undercoating still on the frame here. I tried to get that off, it would not come off, and that's perfectly okay. That means it's well bonded to the metal and we'll just reseal over it, so no big deal. Because I'm going to use the paintbrush method instead of the spray method, I've put my Zero Rust product just in a little cup here, and you don't have to dilute it if you're putting it on with a brush. If you're going to use a sprayer, you need to dilute it with a reducer. But since we're using a brush, we're just going to put it on as is. This is a little overkill for putting it on with a brush, but I just don't like the smell of paint fumes, so here we go. You're going to do 2 coats, and you want to make sure it goes on pretty thin, because if you get it too thick, it's not going to dry properly. So go in a thin layer, and you'll do a second thin coating after about 30 minutes when the first coat dries. It's just like painting anything else. In fact, this stuff is so cool, you can use it on your patio furniture. I'm going to use it on the railing to the front porch of my house, which is rusting pretty badly. You can use it on your kid's radio flyer wagon. Do they even make those anymore? It's just a very versatile product that's so easy to use. It also comes in different colors. We're just going to use black on this frame. But if you wanted your subframe to be, say, red, you could totally do that. You want to let your first coat here dry for about 30 minutes, and then you can put the second coat on, and then you want to wait a full 24 hours for it to completely dry and cure. And that's all there is to it. about 30 minutes, and this is dry to the touch for our first coat, so I'm going to put a thin second coat on. It's always better to do thin coats multiple times than try to do one thick coat, because then it'll never cure properly. Just got to let that dry and cure for about 24 hours. I think Vince is ready to work on the floor pans inside here, and I'm going to go make a sandwich.
Damn, it's nice to know you're eating lunch and I'm doing the work here.
I'm hungry. We've gotten a lot done today. We've got the fire truck nearly torn down, and I got this good start on coating the chassis with the Zero Rust product. What all have you got done on the Trans Am?
Well, I got the floor pans fitted in, and I've got them primed, ready to go for the weld. So now I want to wait for Reese to get here. I want to teach her how to do this so she can do it next time and I don't have to.
That sounds like a good idea.
So where are we at on this car?
Well, the customer had this car, so we have a full $10,000 to work with on the restore. We've spent $140 on each of the 2 floor pans, and I spent $80 on the gallon of Zero Rust, and that should do the whole subframe.
Right.
So we're at $360.
That's not bad. It gives us a lot of money to play with. We're going to need it with this car. It needs some help.
Yeah, it definitely does. But, we really need to get to work on the Plymouth.
Right.
We spent $1,000 on that, and we need to figure out what we're going to do with it, because we have free reign on that. It's ours. We can do whatever we want.
I have some ideas, but you're not going to like them.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't I go back to my office, because I've got some ideas, too, and I want to see if I can come up with a design plan, and then I will run it by you, and I know you and Lauren were going to talk about what to do with the fire truck, because that's advanced stuff, and we definitely need Ms. Metal's help on that.
Yeah, I got some ideas with that, and me and her have bounced some ideas off, and if that truck actually is going to SEMA, it's got to be over the top.
It does.
So.
All right, well, why don't you call Lauren, get to work on that.
Okay.
I'll go back to my office, work on the design for the Plymouth, and then we'll meet back here on another day.
Okay. You eat your sandwich. I'm going to go finish work.
Do you want some?
I'm good.
Are you sure?
No, I'm good.
It's turkey.
No.